Story 1. It can go badly. A family member waited. They found out, only after a lot of therapy, that their spouse had been sexually molested as a child and had repressed it completely. Even after therapy, they could find no enjoyment in the act and ended up getting divorced. I would rather address that before marriage. Story 2. I did. We were both religious. She still is. The build-up to the wedding night was kind of ridiculous, and we had a hard time getting started, so to speak. We eventually figured it out and have a pretty good sex life, but honestly, I don't know if it was worth the wait. Story 3. I had vaginismus due to religiously instilled fear, and after I slowly recovered from that, it turned out my spouse was only really concerned with his own enjoyment. Not worth it. But I mean more overarching things like making sure the person you're dating isn't pretending to be kind when they are actually avoidant and uncaring, not just about sex specifically. Story 4. Worked out well for my wife and me. We have been married for 8 years and have 2 children. She seems to want it slightly more often than I do, so I consider myself quite lucky. It feels special knowing we have only ever experienced it with each other. Story 5. We fully regret it. We were religious, so no sex before marriage, but shock and horror, there was virtually no sex once we were married. It was complete torture for years, and then it turned out she is a lesbian. Definitely find out if your ways of intimacy and sharing yourself completely with each other are the same. Definitely try before you buy. Story 6. Withholding sex until marriage can make people overly eager to marry. Imagine waiting years to have sex only to discover you are not sexually compatible. Story 7. Regretted it. Found out I had no sexual attraction to him, but I didn't know and assumed I was asexual or that the problem was me. I had no way to know otherwise. I did it for religious reasons. I am no longer religious. I am happily divorced from him and happily married to a man with whom I have a great sexual relationship. There was nothing wrong with me. Story 8. You do not know someone until you live with them. The same applies to sex. You are taking a gamble with your life. Story 9. Oh my God. Do not do it. I waited until marriage with my spouse and found out afterward that he is asexual. I knew during the honeymoon he was not like other men, but I was so young and did not know what to do. I am 23 years in, and it is a horribly sad, frustrating, maddening struggle that has destroyed my confidence as a woman. Story 10. I waited. Not a big deal. Religion was part of it, but mostly it was ensuring 0% chance of getting her pregnant until I was ready to be a dad. Story 11. Maybe a hot take, but I have always wondered how people can find out they are not sexually compatible that late in a relationship. I assume they make out and have passionate moments before getting married that would indicate whether they are sexually attracted to each other and enjoy physically being with each other. After enjoying that and continuing to be with that person, I do not see how you would find out you are not sexually compatible, unless later on one person is not into certain kinks the other is into. But I think that should be discussed thoroughly before marriage. If one person is not comfortable doing something that another person really enjoys, then hopefully you can learn that in advance and move on with or without that partner with respect either way. Apologies, this was not the most eloquently written. All to say, I am skeptical of the idea that you should have sex before getting married purely because you need to know if you are sexually compatible. I can usually tell after making out with someone whether we would have a good time together. I think in longer relationships, you learn and try new things and grow together physically anyway. Coming from someone who is now thinking of waiting for marriage, so of course I am biased. Story 12. I did not and do not regret. I know people who did and do not regret. I also know people who did and regretted. There is no right or wrong. Just make sure you are sure about the person and that you are aligned with your values. Story 13. I don't really qualify for this, but I'll add our story. We were secular when we started dating. About 1.5 years into dating, we became Christians and began going to church. We both wanted to stop, but my husband, then boyfriend, was the one to initiate the conversation about going celibate until we got married. We went 10 months completely celibate, nothing sexual, only kissing, and we avoided temptations the best we could, such as not changing clothes in front of each other. It was completely worth it. We never lived together before marriage, so naturally, during our first year, We had some adjusting to do and experienced more small conflicts than before. But we had an amazing renewed honeymoon phase, so these little conflicts were very easy to resolve. We are going on 5 years married this summer. Our sex life is better than ever, and having sex for the first time again was so worth it. My best friend waited to do anything sexual until marriage. They were both already Christians. She has shared that they both thought they were good initially and didn't know any different until it improved. They have been married for 7 years and just had their third unplanned child. So I guess they are doing something right. Story 14. Sex is neither the big deal that waiters make it out to be, nor the small deal that very promiscuous people make it out to be. There is always a middle ground. Sex with those you are in a relationship with is brilliant. Do not throw it around for the sake of it because that devalues the closeness and intimacy. However, I would not recommend withholding it. Too much can go wrong when you enter a marriage with a very important part of the relationship as a total unknown. Story 15. I got lucky and we have great sex, but I still wish I had not waited. Purity culture and compulsory heterosexuality made that aspect of our lives difficult for a long time. Story 16. I am still waiting until marriage for religious reasons, but I would like to hear from people who waited and those who did not wait. Story 17. Absolutely worth it, yes. All my friends said, but you don't know what it's like with someone else. And I replied, yes, and you don't know what it's like to save yourself and be fully dedicated to one person. I'm not telling you that you can't live the way that seems right to you. I don't want to take your right to make your own choices away. But do not ever tell me that you know more than I do. You have experienced one thing, and I have experienced another. Today, 3 decades later, I'm still ride or die with the only woman I've ever been with. We have been through hell and back together, and despite all the problems we've had and adversities we've faced, I would not trade it for anything. Story 18. 10 out of 10. Would do again. Like most things in life, it takes a lot of work, patience, honesty, trust, and communication. It hasn't always been easy. There have been many ups and downs and difficult conversations, but our intimacy is better now than when we were first married. We genuinely care for and respect each other's needs. While we don't always get it right when life is very busy, we give each other grace. There is no one else I would rather be with, and I am genuinely happy that I have only been with my wife. Story 19. My friend did this. He was proudly devout Christian. He was in love with one sister, but she was unavailable, so he married the other. Turns out the other had serious vaginismus and was unable to have sex. I remember sitting in a bar talking to him about it. It was so sad. He is now married to the other sister with children and presumably very happy. A story with a happy ending for everyone except the first sister. Story 20. I was not, but she was a virgin and we waited until marriage to have sex. We dated for a year, and while it was hard for both of us, it made us sure that what we felt for each other wasn't just skin deep. We made sure we could connect emotionally and spiritually. She was a Christian from childhood, but I came to Christ at 21 and met her about 8 months later. We have been married for almost 17 years now, and I thank God for her every day. That woman is my personal angel of mercy and grace. We have endured so much. We have fought, traveled, and been through 13 years of chronic illnesses that would have driven most couples apart. We lost a child together. There is no person on this earth who has ever loved me like her, and I will be the first to tell you I was a project if there ever was one. I had many issues. I think sex would have muddied the waters. Maybe we would have still made it, but maybe I would have been immature and not as committed as I should have been. No sex made me look deeper and put my priorities in place. If you have the kind of connection that comes with that patience, then sex will mature and grow as well. We are definitely better in our sex life than when we started, but just like everything else, you should be growing in all aspects of your life, including physical intimacy. Don't think you have to start with the end goal. That is short-sighted for a lifelong decision. Story 21. We both waited, which made the honeymoon much more enjoyable. The older we get, the fewer novel experiences there are. This was an easy way to make it feel more special. Along those lines, we also did not find out the gender of our children until they were born. It was just a fun way for us to live life. Story 22. That's a complicated question. I went off to college as a 17-year-old freshman who had only been on one date, and that didn't really count. Prom was with a guy who, in retrospect, was probably gay. My first semester, I met and fell in true love with a guy 3 years older. He claimed that he was also a virgin. Since we decided we were deeply in love, would get married as soon as he graduated, and would only ever be with each other, we thought it would be okay to get the party started. So, we used condoms until I went on birth control pills. A few months later, he broke up with me. Fine. It was the early 1980s. I felt like a piece of trash. Like that tomato in the grocery store that too many people have squeezed. I was afraid no other guy would ever want me. Then, and see if you can follow the twisted logic, a guy who knew my ex told me he had run into him. My ex had told him exactly what I needed to do to get him back together with me. He told me to come over to his house that night and he would tell me. I cringe now at how ridiculous it was. Well, like a fool, I went over to the guy's house. He was living with 3 other guys. Nobody else was home. Before I knew it, I had been date raped. Somehow, that broke the spell. In my little puritanical brain, I decided that the next time a nice guy came along and wanted to date me, but wanted to know if I was a virgin, I could admit that I had been raped. If he took that well, then I could go on and admit that I had slept with someone prior to that. Don't judge. If you had known my mother, you would understand. I went on to date someone else. Since I was no longer a virgin, it didn't seem like that big of a leap to sleep with him. Then, a guy who was in the group with my first boyfriend started coming around all the time. I didn't like him. I found him annoying, but he was a decent enough guy. Long story short, I didn't have the social skills to turn him away when he knocked on my dorm and eventual apartment door. At that point, excluding the man who raped me, I had had sex multiple times with 2 different boyfriends. One night, when the nice guy had come into my bedroom at my request to put something up high in the closet that I couldn't reach, I sat on the end of the bed waiting for him to get things moved around. He eventually came back and started smooching me. Next thing I knew, he was on top of me, fiddling around. He had no idea what he was doing. All I know is that I missed my period, and soon after, I found out I was pregnant. I married him. The sex life was terrible. Yes, I should have divorced him as soon as we got married to give the baby a name. However, one thing led to another and life got in the way. I do not regret the 2 guys I slept with before I got pregnant and married. If not for that, I wouldn't know what a great sex life is like. Whatever you do, be careful. Story 23. Worth it? I don't know if I would say that. Something I regret? Not at all. I grew up a religious kid and wanted to wait for marriage. I didn't, to be honest, but I married the person who was my first time. Sex isn't anything like people say or hype up. It's definitely not what society makes it out to be. I know all my friends, male and female, regretted their first time back in high school. I'm good with my choice, but if the opportunity ever presents itself, I wouldn't see anything wrong with having other experiences. But I also just don't need them. Plus, my partner and I have had a lot of opportunities to grow together. Story 24. We both waited and now have a dead bedroom after nearly 20 years. I wish I had experimented so that I would have known how unimportant sex and physical intimacy are to her. Story 25. I did not wait. Heaven help you if you do. How can you be sure you are sexually compatible otherwise? Hate to get married after waiting all this time for it, only to realize it just does not flow right for both of you and end up in a permanently dead bedroom. Story 26. As a formerly very religious person, every couple I knew that waited ended up having a cheater. Story 27. I have seen both sides of this issue. I was in a long-term relationship with someone who wanted to wait until marriage. I agreed, although in hindsight I was not as keen on it. We engaged in other sexual activities but did not have penile-vaginal intercourse for a few years, and then we broke up. It was emotional, messy, and scarring for me. I was in my early 20s, a virgin living in a major city, and had to go out into the world. I knew I wanted to eventually meet someone and be in a relationship, but I felt I carried a lot of emotional baggage. One thing led to another, and I got back together with this ex. We somehow agreed to have sex one day and just did it. The details are a bit fuzzy as it was about 20 years ago. We had intercourse once or twice more and broke up again. The experience was absolutely awful. Again, I felt broken. A few months later, I met an amazing person who was more sexually experienced than me. I was very nervous and did not explain my whole story until many years later for fear of rejection. We became sexually active a couple of months into dating, and I felt really safe and never looked back. We have been married for 15 years now. My first long-term relationship caused a lot of mental and emotional damage that I have only recently faced after many years. It boiled down to me not speaking up for my needs. I would not wait again, but I respect those who do. I would make sure that whatever the choice is, both parties are on the same page and communicate honestly about it. Story 28. Not knowing whether you are sexually compatible and intentionally not finding out until the cost of correcting this error is maximally high is not a very clever concept. Story 29. Big mistake. I cannot overstate it. I had had a few partners. She had not. I agreed to wait. Huge mistake in my case. Her interest and desire to have a healthy sex life that helps build a strong and enduring bond is almost nil. Her desire to understand and try to meet any of my needs is almost non-existent. After many years of doing life her way, I am done. I am starting the unwinding process. Story 30. Yeah, it was great. Felt really special and was a perfect way to start our marriage. Contrary to what many are saying here, my wife and I are religious, but we had no problem with intimacy. Some of you must have been raised by some very strict zealot types. Story 31. Married 23 years this fall, and I wouldn't change a thing. We were each other's first and only. My feeling is that you should never marry someone unless you are totally in love and connected to them as a person, so that nothing else matters in the relationship. If you are meant to be with that person, if they are your one and only, and you communicate, all the other issues will work themselves out. If you are both willing to put the other first in all you do, you can figure out just about anything. We figured out sex together, what worked for each of us and what did not, and we don't have to worry that the other person is comparing you to someone else they have been with before. It's amazing. I hear a lot of people say, "But how did you know you would be sexually compatible?" I say, I did not. But I knew going in that if we were not, it would not matter. I would still want to be with him forever. Story 32. Since I was young and understood how things worked, I could never understand how someone would enter a lifetime commitment without knowing if it would work out on a basic level. You do not do this with anything else. Story 33. I waited. I am incredibly bitter and angry that I did. For me, I view life as something to be enjoyed and explored. Sex with just one person is incredibly limiting and narrow in my mind. I really wish I had allowed myself to explore it more. Either way, sex is not the end-all be-all of love. It's just sex. It can be incredibly beautiful, also incredibly awful, and everything in between. Like everyone else said, make up your own mind. Story 34. Whoever said love is not about sex clearly did not go without it. It is not everything, but it is a big part. And if that connection is missing, the relationship feels incomplete quickly. Story 35. I waited a long time. I held it back many times. When I finally passed gas, it was a huge relief. It was worth it for sure. Story 36. Not sure if they waited until the wedding night or not, but my aunt and uncle are each other's first loves. They are still together and very happy today in their 70s. So perhaps waiting is worth it. Story 37. Let me tell you, when couples fight, it is never about an ex-boyfriend, sexual partner, promiscuity, having an illegitimate child, or comparisons in bed. Story 38. Absolutely, I don't regret it. Why would I have waited? All my life was for me to find the most beautiful man I have ever laid eyes on. And I don't think I would be the same person if I had thought to myself, no sex before marriage. Story 39. How on earth are they supposed to know? They have only had Cheerios and do not even know what Frosted Flakes taste like. Story 40. I am from a very traditional culture where women are expected to be virgins when they marry, but there is no such expectation for men. While many of us do not have vaginal sex, almost all of us, except the very religious or those with strict families, Engage in other forms of intimacy such as touching, oral, and anal. This approach seems to work well, as it allows us to reserve something for marriage and avoid the risk of pregnancy, while still exploring intimacy, chemistry, and compatibility. Story 41. If they did wait, maybe the thrill would not be as expected. When I want a girl right then and there, I want her, especially when I have dated her. Now that my sex life is inactive, all the girls want to hook up with me. I say forget it because it is not worth the wait. Story 42. We have been married for 29 years, and he would never advocate sleeping around or having sex before marriage. Story 43. No, absolutely not. If I had not waited, I would have realized my ex-husband was not going to be the one. Story 44. Waiting until marriage is a bad idea, and here is why. You meet someone and get married after a few years. You have already moved in together and maybe bought a house. What happens when you inevitably find out you are incompatible in the bedroom? One of you is traditional and the other likes to experiment. Always try before you buy. Story 45. I seriously considered it. I was in a relationship in my early 20s, and I decided I was not ready to get married, but I was ready for activities. I do not regret anything. Story 46. Marriage is rarely happy, so it is more precious than love. If you meet him or her, you must embrace the happiness. Story 47. Absolutely it was. Mind you, the abstinence was coupled with plenty of communication and education, plus the sex was only one aspect of the marriage rather than the end goal. We have been married for over 10 years and are going stronger than ever. Story 48. If you wait until marriage, you can never know if it was worth it. What are you comparing it to? Story 49. I did because I was religious and so was she. It was not worth waiting. We divorced and sex was much better both when I was dating and after I remarried. Story 50. No. I have only had sexual relations with my wife, and now I regret it. I could have had many opportunities but was too influenced to do it. One girl in particular, I was almost intimate with her when I backed out. Stupid move. Story 51. I am a Muslim, and my religion prohibits me from engaging in any relationship with a non-mahram man outside the framework of marriage. This is to protect a woman from falling into fornication, which has serious consequences, and to preserve her loyalty to the husband who truly deserves her. A Muslim woman remains faithful to her future husband from the moment she is born until the day she dies. She is a precious jewel, and only a man of true worth deserves her. Likewise, a man must also avoid emotional or romantic relationships with women and preserve himself. He should be pure and clean so that he may deserve a woman who is pure like him. There is a verse in the Quran where Allah says, "Impure women are for impure men, and impure men are for impure women. Pure women are for pure men, and pure men are for pure women. They are innocent of what people say about them. For them is forgiveness and a generous provision." Surah An-Nur, 2400 hours 26. Story 52. I waited. Yes, it is worth it, and I love not having any memories of sleeping with old boyfriends to deal with. Also, it is not that hard for a man to put a ring on it if that is on hold until he is ready to make a commitment for life. I consider it utterly unwise to sleep around before marriage. The bonding with no commitment is actually two people becoming one. Is it any wonder it is hard for a person to know who they really are? Marriage is like saying I am going to be there through thick and thin. God designed it so that two committed partners come together and have children, then work together to provide them with a stable two-parent home. Story 53. I see what you mean. If she is really interested in you, she will engage within the first 2 to 3 months of knowing each other every time. If not, then you are not the right person for her. Story 54. Not worth it. No experience, just logical. You will not find a single virgin woman over the age of 18. Only virgin men, and they are considered unworthy. Have sex as much as you can. Use condoms every time. Story 55. I would say do not get married. It is a trap. Find a partner and a friend. A piece of paper to say do this or that is a contradiction in itself because you did not sign a piece of paper to get dressed or to log into Reddit. So why wait for marriage just because someone with a different perspective said it is what you should do? Story 56. I didn't, and I'm okay with my choices, every one of them. My bigger issue was that I wished I hadn't been with such toxic women or feminists beforehand. They really hurt my idea of relationships in college. I was my wife's first everything. She is an amazing woman, loves me dearly, and I cherish her. But there is a moment when none of your past matters, and for us, it was the day of our wedding. I hardly thought about my exes and certainly didn't reminisce about them. I might have had a fleeting thought of, I wish she was someone else or did what another did. But at the end of the day, I trusted her. I never trusted the others enough to marry them. There have been many issues, as with any couple in this day and age, but we are both happy to be where we are and moving forward. Story 57. I knew two men who married virgins, and both women ended up cheating just a couple of months after the wedding. Do not marry someone who has not experienced life yet. They may not know how to stop once they start. Story 58. I was responsible and waited until I was 15 before I started dating my girlfriend. Even though I had been with several girls before I got married at 18, I still regretted it. You start to want what you have not tried. My wife was really pretty, but she had a larger figure, and I realized I prefer skinnier girls without cellulite, size 2 to 6. She was like a size 10. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.